In this podcast lesson, Ethan and I are talking about ways that you can improve your English listening skills. Did you know that 60% of our time spent communicating is by listening? However, we only actually retain 25% of that information. So if you listen to this podcast or if you're watching it on YouTube, then you are going to learn how to retain a lot more of this. And as always, if you head on over to our Instagram at RealLife.English, you're going to find a bonus tip there. So make sure you check it out as soon as you finish listening to or watching this podcast. So this burning question came from Instagram, and it's a really fitting one for today. And as it's an Instagram name, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. I'm not sure. Would you say verse there or versi?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe he's Italian. It could be like verce or something.
Yeah. But the question is passive listening useful to improve listening skills?
It's a good question. So first of all, what is passive listening in case someone isn't familiar with that term?
So passive listening is when you have something going on in the background, you're not really actively listening to it or using it to take down notes or study specific things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might think of like the difference, for example, could be if you're just listening to this podcast while you're on a run or at the supermarket, or if you're listening to this podcast and taking notes on every pronunciation, every kind of like use of grammar that you noticed, every new word or expression that you didn't know, that would be more active listening because you're really listening to like grab these little pieces of information to study. So I definitely think passive listening is extremely useful to improve your listening skills because I think really you need both and you need a good balance. You can have the times where you are actually studying and you can have the times where you're just like listening to that podcast in kind of a leisurely way while you're cooking or while you're on a run. And the same maybe for like a TV series. I think there's times where it's nice to just lay back and like relax at the end of the day with the TV series and actually watch it in English. And our brains are pretty amazing because they can like pick so much up just from the context. But then if you also add in that active listening, it's kind of what's going to give you that extra boost. It's going to make your listening a lot more efficient, right?
Exactly. I would definitely agree. I think it's really important and it's great to do. It just shouldn't be the only thing you're doing. You do also still need to balance it out with active listening as well. So, sometimes, for example, you can listen to this podcast when you're doing lots of other different things so that it's convenient for you. But it's also good to sometimes actually sit down with it and you can write down notes or specific things that you want to learn. So it's definitely useful. And I would just say it shouldn't be the only way that you are listening to English if you want to have a bit more rapid progress.
Definitely. But I think that if you are a really effective way to learn English or any language is just to immerse yourself as much as possible. And I know a lot of people listening to this won't have kind of the fortune that Andrea and I do to be living outside of our native country and be living in a place where they speak the language that we're learning. But even if you're not, I've met so many people who have never traveled to the United States or the UK or any English-speaking country, and they have like exceptional English just because they spend so much time listening to things, reading things, watching things in English. So definitely you can see that as that passive time can be kind of that immersion time, and then you still need to have some time where you're studying, just like Andrea said. So great question, Verce or Verse. We're sorry if we can't pronounce your name correctly. But if you want us to answer your burning question, then you can ask us it again over on the show notes for this podcast, or you can head over to Insta, just like Verce did, and leave us a question there. So we hope to see you there.
So this is a new section that we're trying out on the podcast. We think it's a great way to involve our audience more. So we'd love you to ask us more questions, whether it's in the comments down below, or whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it. And also via our Instagram or Facebook, any other ways that you want to communicate with us, we'll try and answer your questions.
Yeah, so I think that is a perfect opportunity for us to roll into today's main topic, all about listening. All right, so we have different tips here for you to improve your listening skills, which I think you'll find immensely helpful in English, and maybe it will also help you with some things even in your native language just to be a better communicator. And then we have a seventh one that you'll find exclusively over on our Instagram at reallife.english. So be sure to check that out after. So, Andrea, what is the first tip that we have for them today?
So, the first tip is to be present. And this is one that is important anyway in whatever you're doing, whether you're speaking English or any other language, your native language, because there are so many distractions now. And I feel that so many people forget what makes a good listener and don't actually listen very well to the people they're speaking with. So, when you're having a conversation with someone, really try to focus on what they're saying and also their expressions, their gestures, their tone of voice, because even if you're not fully understanding every single word they're saying, that will help you to pick up on things as well. So, it's going to help you to understand.
Yeah, I think like learners, they'll freeze even. They get really scared because they can't understand every single word. But it's just there's so many other things that you can understand just by the context, by maybe the person's body language, and by other things that are kind of below the surface that are going to help you to kind of overcome the fact that maybe you missed a few of the words.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I feel that people tend to do as well is like you're listening to someone and you'll start to translate what you want to say back to them. So you're probably translating what they're saying to you and then also trying to formulate like the perfect response to what they're saying. So you're already like losing a lot of what they're trying to communicate to you just by doing that. So it's really important not to do that. You need to kind of trust yourself more in the fact that when they stop speaking and like it's your turn or you want to respond, you'll be able to do it. Even if, there's a bit of a pause while you gather yourself, try not to do that because then you're not really being a very good listener.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of those tips too that can be really useful, even applying it to your native language, whatever it is, because so often we're just listening to respond, basically. We're thinking of like, what am I going to say when so and so finishes talking? But when you're doing that, you're not really fully hearing what they're saying and, you're not really present and stuff. And so I think too, just for building better relationships with people, is like showing them that you're really listening to what they're saying. And you can even there's different techniques for this too, kind of like mirroring back what they said to kind of show you've understood it. I think that there's more artful ways that you can do this, but maybe that's a low level way that you can just be a little bit better at communicating and a little bit better at listening. And this can be good when you're speaking English too, to kind of be like, let me make sure that I understood you right. So, you mean such and such, and maybe you can kind of say what they said in your own words or something like that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is just good advice for anything because sometimes I feel like the art of conversation can sometimes be lost because like you mentioned, lots of people sometimes are thinking about what they want to say next. So they don't listen to what you're actually saying. They just then want to give their 2 cents or something.
Exactly. They're more interested in listening to themselves speaking than in listening to you speaking.
Yeah.
So I think like something else about being present too is realizing we talked before, kind of about like passive and active listening. I think there's kind of the same thing in some way for speaking, because just being present also means that you're realizing this isn't my study time. This is actually like the time to be out there. If we were to relate it to sports, that you're not doing kind of like the practice. This is actually like the big game or whatever. So you should have done your practice at home. And now you just need to be present and in the moment and everything. So you shouldn't be trying to think about like all the words that you don't know that you need to review. You shouldn't be trying to figure out like all the exact correct grammar of what you want to say. That's things that you can continue working on at home. If you have a teacher or something, you can work on it with them in your class time. But I think when you're out there speaking with someone, just trying to be there, not really worrying about all that, not worrying so much if you make a mistake, because, you have to make a lot of mistakes in order to get better.
That's a really good point. And if you do make mistakes or when you have that conversation or that connection with someone and you can go back home and then reflect on it so that then it can inform your studying and, what you want to work on next.
Yeah, and I think such a big thing there too is just like if you make a mistake and maybe it's kind of funny or something, just learning to laugh at yourself and be like, okay, later when I get home, I'm going to work on that, whatever it was.
Definitely.
Wouldn't it be great if there was some way to understand real English without getting lost and without getting bored? Well, now there is. With our Real Life Native Immersion course, we will take you on a 41-week real-life adventure of the English language, each week exploring a different topic connected to our goal to help you understand and use real native English and make it a permanent part of your life in a way that is fun, natural, and convenient. The best part is you can try it for free with our 3-part Power Learning series. We will send it to your email. Just go to reallifeglobal.com/pod. That's POD to sign up. Now let's get back to today's podcast lesson. So moving on from that one, I think that's such a fantastic tip for your English, for any other language, for life in general, is trying to be more present. What's the next one, which is, I guess it's a little bit more directly related to learning a language?
Yeah, so the next one is to expose yourself to a variety of accents, because if you are only exposed to one, then when you hear a different English accent, you're going to struggle. And this makes me think a little bit as well. When I first started making lessons on Learn English with TV series, some people were like, oh my gosh, I don't understand her. Is she speaking English? Where is she from? All these kinds of things, because they were really used to your accent. So that's already like a great thing. Like by watching Learn English with TV series and the Real Life English channel, you have an American and a British accent. So already you are practicing listening to some different accents.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's so important. And even within the country, because if you're learning British English, most people might only listen to RP, to receive pronunciation. And if you're learning American English, maybe you've only heard the kind of like standard American that we might hear on like the news or on most TV series. But, you know, if you go from corner to corner of these countries, you're going to encounter dozens of different ways that people speak. And maybe they even use kind of unique words or expressions and things like this. So if you're able to expose yourself to more accents by maybe watching more of a diversity of TV series, by watching different sorts of programs, documentaries, things like this, or if you're actually, I guess, in the country too, by kind of exposing yourself to different types of people, then you're going to feel much more confident in being able to encounter anyone and understanding them.
Definitely. And, you know, if there are certain series that you don't have access to or things like that, there are so many videos on YouTube, so you can find something that you're interested in. Maybe it's a hobby that you want to learn more about. Maybe it's football, maybe it's makeup tutorials. It could be anything. And you can find YouTubers with different accents to watch to learn about your hobby. And you already have some knowledge of the subject matter if it's one of your hobbies. So already that's going to help you. Like if it's an accent you really haven't listened to before, that's already going to help you a little bit. And then the more you do it, the more you're exposed to these accents, the better your understanding will be.
Exactly. So we have actually 2 lessons that Andrea's done on different British accents, which might be really helpful if you're trying to get more exposure, which if you're on YouTube, we can link down in the description below. And we have another one that I just did on American accents, but that's not, as of the moment that this will come out, that's not live yet. But maybe if you're watching this after it's been published, you can try to go find that, just like look up 5 American accents.
Yeah, so these are great ways. I mean, already there you've got some lessons that you can just really quickly go and search on YouTube or click the links down below. And already you're going to be exposed to 15 different accents just with those 3 lessons.
Totally. And I think also with English being such a global language, I think this applies to beyond just, you know, different accents within the UK, the US, Australia and such. I think it's also really important that you expose yourself to other learners and all other non-native speakers because, you know, maybe if you're traveling or if you are using your English within your job at an international company, most likely you're going to connect with people sooner and later from all sorts of different backgrounds. So it's really important that you kind of have the skills necessary to be able to understand them, even if they have like a really thick accent, for example. So I think like something else that can really help here as well is kind of having in your tool belt the survival phrases, which we did another podcast on, which we can link on the show notes and in the description below on YouTube. I think that this has been a really fantastic topic. I've really enjoyed discussing this with you today, Andrea, and I hope that you, listener, have found this useful. I hope that even applying some of these right now, as you've been listening to the podcast, maybe you have found helpful to understand us a little bit better. And another topic that we want to do very soon as well is just talking about more general how to be a better listener, which I think you'll be able to apply more to your native language. So be sure to look out for that. But I think that's all that we have for today on the Real Life English podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next week. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Hey again, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Don't be a stranger. You can find all the notes like vocabulary, links, and more for this lesson on our blog at reallifeglobal.com. And connect with us and on Instagram at reallife.english for even more fun English recommendations. Do you want to continue your learning and get confident, fluent English? Then I have a couple great recommendations for you. First of all, check out our YouTube channel, Learn English with TV series, where you can have fun learning to understand fast-speaking natives with your favorite movies, series, and more without getting lost, without missing the jokes, and without subtitles. Second, if you like our podcast, then our Real Life Native Immersion course is perfect for you. It is the next best thing to studying abroad in an English-speaking country. Try it for free with our 3-part power learning series. Just go to reallifeglobal.com/pod to sign up. Finally, if you are enjoying our podcast, then please assist us in helping more people go beyond the classroom and live their English. You can do this by sending a link to this podcast to a friend or by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. We might even shout you out on the podcast. Stay healthy and safe, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Aw, yeah.